Let me start with a scene I never want you to live through. You step off a long flight. You're tired. You're thinking about your own bed, your own shower, your own life. You hand the officer your green card like you have done hundreds of times, and then that officer looks at you and asks normal questions. How long were you gone? You answer 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Maybe you were caring for a sick parent. Maybe you were handling a funeral. Maybe you were dealing with a crisis you did not choose. And then that officer says, "Come with me." Now you are not in the regular line anymore. Now you're in a small room, and now the questions get sharper. Where do you actually live? Where do you work? Who pays your bills? Why were you gone so long? Are you sure you still live here? In that moment, you realize that nobody explains clearly enough. A green card lets you live in the United States. Citizenship protects your right to stay in the United States. Those are not the same thing. Hi, I'm Zaira Solano, founder of Solano Immigration Law Firm, practicing immigration law for over 14 years. And today I'm breaking down the real difference between a green card and U.S. citizenship in 2026. Not the brochure version, but the real world version that affects your travel, your family, your safety, your job options, and your ability to sleep at night. Here is the simplest way to remember this. A green card is permission. Citizenship is protection. With a green card, you are a lawful permanent resident. You can live here, work here, build a life here. For many people, that's a huge win, but permanent doesn't mean untouchable. With citizenship, you gain something legally different. You gain an absolute right to enter the United States. You gain the right to vote. You gain access to certain jobs and benefits that require citizenship. And most importantly, you remove entire categories of immigration risk. So if you've ever thought, I've had my green card for years, I'm basically safe, I want you to listen closely to the next part. And yes, lawful permanent residents can be placed in removal proceedings, deportation proceedings. This is not rare. It is built into the law. The deportability grounds are in federal statute, including 8 U.S.C. 1227, which lays out categories where any alien can be deportable, including certain criminal grounds and other violations. I want to be careful here. Immigration consequences depend on details. The exact statute of criminal conviction matters. The sentence imposed by the judge matters. The record, the court file matters. The timeline matters. If you have any criminal history, you should get individualized legal advice before you apply for anything. But the big idea is still true. Green card does not block deportation. Citizenship essentially does, except in rare denaturalization situations, which we will cover later. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like someone with a decades-old plea deal who thought it was just a misdemeanor, finding out that immigration law does not treat it just like anything. It looks like someone getting stopped at the airport and suddenly the government is reviewing their history with a different level of intensity. It looks like someone who built their whole life here realizing that permanent residency can still be challenged when the wrong issue shows up. And this leads to the next category that blindsides good people who did nothing malicious. If you have a green card, travel is not just travel, it is a legal event. There is a federal definition that matters a lot. Under INA Section 101A13C, a lawful permanent resident generally is not treated as seeking admission when returning to the United States unless one of several exceptions applies. One of those exceptions is being absent from the United States for a continuous period in excess of 100 days. That is where the 6-month warning comes from. It's tied to the statute. Does it mean every trip over 6 months automatically loses your green card? No. Does it mean your reentry can become more complicated, more scrutinized, and more risky? Yes. And here is the second trap. Long trips can also delay or damage your eligibility for citizenship. The general naturalization rule is in 8 U.S.C. 1427. It requires, among other things, 5 years of continuous residence as a lawful permanent resident, physical presence in the United States for at least half that time, and at least 3 months of residence in the state or USCIS district where you file. Then the law gets even more specific about absences. An absence of more than 6 months but less than 1 year can break continuous residence unless you prove you did not abandon your U.S. residence. An absence of 1 year or more breaks continuous residence with limited exceptions. So you can be doing everything right, and then one extended trip quietly resets your timeline. Now, some green card holders say, fine, I'll just avoid long travel. But life does not always ask permission. Parents get sick, babies are born, emergencies happen, jobs send you abroad. There is a tool called a reentry permit. It is requested using Form I-131. Government resources explain that for permanent residents, a reentry permit is generally valid for 2 years from the date of issuance. Important: a reentry permit is not a magic shield. It helps, but it does not guarantee you will never face questions about ties and intent. The facts still matter. Your home, your job, your taxes, your family, your life pattern, all of it. Citizenship removes this whole category of fragility. You can travel, you can live abroad, you can come home. Your passport is your proof. Now, let's talk about the reason many people finally choose citizenship. The law treats immediate relatives of U.S. citizens differently than most categories. Under 8 U.S.C. 1151 B2AI, immediate relatives include the children, spouses, and parents of U.S. citizens, with the rule that the citizen must be at least 21 years old to sponsor a parent. This matters because it changes how visas are allocated and how backlogs work compared to preference categories. Green card holders can petition certain relatives, but they are operating inside capped categories with waiting lines. That is why two people can file similar family paperwork and get radically different results based on one thing. This is where I see heartbreak. People wait years and years to reunite with a spouse or child, and then they find out that if they had naturalized earlier, their family pathway may have been faster and more flexible. I cannot promise timelines. Processing varies and backlogs are real, but citizenship can change which lane you are even allowed to stand in. Now we need to talk about a danger zone that does not feel like immigration at all. Under 8 U.S.C. 1227 A6A, any alien who has voted in violation of any federal statute or local law is deportable with a narrow exception written into the statute. That means if you voted unlawfully as a non-citizen, even if you did not think it was a big deal, even if someone told you it was fine, it can become a serious immigration problem. And there is an even harsher category that comes up in real cases: false claim to U.S. citizenship. Under 8 U.S.C. 1182 A6CII, a person who falsely represents themselves to be a U.S. citizen for a purpose or benefit under federal or state law is inadmissible. This is why I tell people to be obsessed with accuracy on forms. DMV registration forms, employment documents, school paperwork, any form where citizen is a checkbox, because immigration law does not treat that checkbox like a small mistake if it creates a legal false claim scenario. Citizenship solves one part of this. Once you're a citizen, voting is your right, and you're not living with the fear that a wrong box could cost your status. But if you have ever had an issue like this in your past, you need to talk to an immigration attorney before you file for naturalization. Do not walk into an interview hoping it never comes up. USCIS asks, so what does it actually take to become a citizen in 2026? Most applicants file under the general 5-year rule in 8 U.S.C. 1427. That statute is explicit about 5 years continuous residence, at least half the time physically present in the United States, and 3 months in your filing USCIS district. Some applicants qualify under the 3-year rule through marriage to a U.S. citizen. That pathway is in 8 U.S.C. 1430. It requires 3 years of continuous residence as a lawful permanent resident and living in marital union with the citizen spouse during the required period, along with physical presence requirements. There is also an early filing rule. USCIS guidance explains that applicants filing under the general provision may file up to 90 days before they meet the required 5-year continuous residence period. Now let's talk money, because people delay citizenship for years over outdated fee information. USCIS lists the N400 filing fee as $710 if the filing is online and $760 if the filing is by paper, with reduced fee options in certain cases. Fees can change, so always verify on the USCIS website before you file. But as of early January 2026, that is what the USCIS website is publishing. I also want to say this clearly. Naturalization is not just a test, it's a legal screening. USCIS will look at your travel, your taxes, your criminal history, your child support obligations if applicable, your registration history, and your truthfulness across every application filing you've ever submitted. That is why citizenship is powerful. It locks in your status after you pass that screening. But that is also why you do not want to file casually if you have any red flags. You want a strategy, not hope. People ask me this all the time. Is citizenship truly taking forever? For most people, yes, in practical terms. A naturalized U.S. citizen is not deportable the way a green card holder is. But there is a legal concept called denaturalization. Under 8 U.S.C. 1451, the government can pursue revocation of naturalization if it was illegally procured by concealment of a material fact or willful misrepresentation. This is not about minor mistakes. This is about serious deception or legal ineligibility that was hidden. Most citizens will never face this, but it is important for one reason. It proves the theme of the entire video. Honesty matters. Documentation matters. Your choices today shape your safety tomorrow. So here's my decision filter, and I want you to answer honestly. If you plan to live in the United States long term, if your kids are here, if your career is here, if your future is here, then citizenship is usually the strongest protection you can get because it reduces removal risk. It removes travel fragility. It upgrades your family's sponsorship power. It gives you the right to vote and fully participate. It turns your status from conditional to secure. But if you have any of the following, slow down and get legal advice before you file. Any arrests, charges, convictions, or pending cases, long trips outside the United States, especially trips close to or over 6 months, any confusion about taxes, residency filings, or non-resident claims, any voting registration, voting history, or citizenship checkbox issues, any past immigration complications, misstatements, or prior denials. Because filing for citizenship isn't just applying for a benefit, it is inviting a full review. If you do it smart, it can be life-changing in the best way. If you do it casually, it can surface problems you did not know you had. Now you know the real difference between a green card and citizenship in 2026. You know the legal gaps. You know the risk points. You know why permanent does not always feel permanent when life happens. But there is one place where these differences become painfully really fast: the airport. That is why your next step is to watch my next video, Airport Immigration Questions You Must Know, with answers. Because even if you have a green card, one bad airport interview can trigger a chain of events you did not expect. In the next video, I break down the exact questions officer asks, what they are really listening for, and how to answer in a way that protects your status instead of accidentally putting it at risk. If your life is here, you can't afford to improvise at the border. Go watch Airport Immigration Questions You Must Know with answers right now, and I will see you in that next video.